So the site here is a 19th century farmstead site. We do know that there was a family here, a gentleman by the name of John Green, who lived on this site before and during the war. He did die during the war, actually after General Order Number 11, when everyone was evacuated out of the county. The history reads that he decided to stay kind of in the area in hiding, and he did die before the end of the war. However, actually, his wife Jane lived to be 88 years old, and she's buried over in the West Point Cemetery. We found her tombstone over there. So we came back here and we excavated last June, for 3 weeks. And then we just started on Tuesday, actually, of this week. And we're trying to see if we can expose as much of the structure as possible. We've been finding a lot of evidence of burning. The structure definitely burned down in a significant fire at one point. There's charcoal everywhere. A lot of the rocks have kind of broken apart, turned red, like you would find in a fire. And we're finding a lot of structural material, broken window glass, nails, but also ceramics, gun parts. A similar story is I'm trying to figure out how the border war, the pervasive violence over a long period of time, a decade and on into the Civil War, what kind of an impact that had on the everyday people. We hear a lot in the Civil War about the battles, the generals, the really famous locations and people, but we don't hear a lot about the everyday person, particularly in our area when we have this really unique history related to the Civil War that you don't find really anywhere else in the country. What was that like for the average person? If you're living for a decade or more with a constant threat of violence, somebody burning down your home, taking your livestock, your crops, killing your husband, sons, brothers, what does that do to your standard of living? And what does that do to the county over a prolonged period of time? What kind of an impact does that have on people? So believe it or not, little bits of ceramic and little pieces of glass and nails and stove parts can paint a pretty good picture for us of the kind of material that people had access to versus what they actually were able themselves to purchase. For instance, we can look at the Steamboat Arabia Museum. Arabia Museum, yeah. And that went down in 1856, which is right in the middle of the border war era. And we can look at that and see the kind of material that realistically was being brought into this part of the country. And we can compare that to what the people out here were able to actually purchase and get access to. And so were they able to keep up with the Joneses, so to speak, or not? Or how did that change after the war? Did it improve? Was it worse after the war? One of the factors is the town of West Point. I don't know if people know much about the history of the town of West Point. Some probably do. But it was originally about a mile north of here. And it was pretty much the economic heart of the county. It was platted, established in 1850, and it had the Indian Agency there, plus the military road came down from Leavenworth and Westport, and it cut into Missouri just at West Point and then back into Kansas down to Fort Scott. And that was a major provisioning point for people going down the Cattle Road to Texas, people going out to California, and then later into Kansas when that opened up as a territory. Multiple hotels, one of which had 40 rooms. Newspapers, multiple mail deliveries, a surgery, a Wainwright, a school. It had everything. And this is in 1850. Keep in mind, Missouri, of course, didn't become a state until 1821. The county, Bates County itself, wasn't platted until 1838. People didn't really start to even move in until about the 1840s, other than perhaps some fur trappers and people associated with the Harmony Mission. So this was pretty impressive to have this large of an enterprise going at that point in the county's history. In 1861, Jim Lane came and burned it down right after the war started that fall. And then it was finally annihilated completely with General Order Number 11 in 1863, and it was never rebuilt. And we're not 100% sure exactly where it was. There are two different locations I've seen on different plat maps for where it is. It's in the same section that shows it, but some show it in the northern, some show it in the southern quarter of the section, and so that's my dream project, is get some people out there and try to find the town of West Point. But that was, I said, kind of the economic heart of the county. And then during the war, it was wiped out, and it was never rebuilt. And so I think it would have a significant impact on the quality of life for the people who came back after the war to not have that economic center in this part of the county. So I'm trying to figure out what kind of an impact that had, if any, on the folks that were here, and just shed a little bit of light on the day-to-day person. And I think there's something that we can all identify with having to just live through hard times and deal with tragedy and make do and all of that. And I think that that record is kind of lost in the historic record, but it's all right here in the record.